Welcome to Drinkin Bros, presented by BlackRifleCoffee.com. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Drinkin Bros. We're here with one of our personal favorites today, Jesse Merlin, and he's got a song for you.
La vendetta, oh la vendetta, è un piacer serbato ai saggi, è un piacer serbato ai saggi.
Oh, wow!
That is the best opening in Drinkin Bros history, right there. The best opening. So this is how we met. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Jesse Merlin, one of our favorites. He was in Range 15. We met
in Helen Keller.
He was also in Helen Keller. We've done 2 movies with him.
Three, yeah.
Three, yes.
Yes, because we started with FDR together, yeah.
Yes. Well, you've done 2.
I've done 2.
You've done 2. I've done 3.
Yes.
But you're one of the most talented actors on the planet.
Oh, bless you.
And like when you came in and auditioned for FDR, and I was reading through your resume, there was close to 40 operas on there. And I couldn't believe it. Like, I didn't know if it was real.
You know, I think I argued with my agent is like, do you really need a second page on your resume? I think you're the only person who's ever been impressed by that because I have like all the acting and musical theater work.
Beyond.
And then on the second page is all the opera stuff. And it's funny, that was my life for 10, 11 years. That was my full-time thing. I sang about 50 roles, a little bit in Europe, mostly, you know, very medium-sized regional career here in the United States. But how nice that you took it seriously. I remember that I came in for Werewolf Hitler, and it was on Rosh Hashanah, and it was, and there were, and you know, not everybody wanted to be there. It was a hilarious set of sides, but it was a little edgy for some people. And I saw this, I'm just like, it was like, oh, let me add it. My agent called me up. He's like, Jesse, I got the role that you were born to play. It's called Werewolf Hitler. And in that moment, you know exactly what your agent thinks of you.
Yeah. But by the way, I never told you this, but because that day there was an emergency casting session. The guy, it was. Oh God, this is gonna sound fucking ridiculous. I had another Hitler or 2 in some other movies that I had written. So there was a guy.
In Pool Boy, yeah.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
So that guy was probably going to come back and play Hitler. So I get a call that he got like CSI or something, and so we had to cast it.
Oh, my good fortune. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, anyways, I'm not Jewish. I know nothing of the Jewish religion, nor do I ever pretend to be. I did not know it was Rosh Hashanah. So when I got in, the casting were like, hey, so that list we sent you of people who were coming in, it's been cut in half. And I was like, why? And they were like, well, Hollywood is a big Jewish town, obviously. All their agents are Jewish. And they were like, you're reading for a role of Hitler on Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah, rush casting on a Friday, yeah on the
and
Sabbath,
I was like,
yeah.
Oh my God, I didn't know we were shooting, and I was like, I didn't know we couldn't move the date, and people were there and all that shit. You came in, destroyed everyone, because it's one of those.
Did you come in with what you ended up playing?
More or less, it was one of those things where I was agonizing. I don't think I did, but it's like, do I wear a false mustache? Because I know some people did, and it was one of the
voice.
Some guys
but the
shaved.
voice and the accent and everything. You came in with that.
Because I speak, coming from opera, I speak a little French, Italian, and German. So I'm just like, okay, how can I work this dialogue so he sounds like he's a pissed off Bavarian guy? That he's from that part of the country. And then the major difference with the actual role is once the mask was on, because, I looked like the dad in Teen Wolf, I had my eyes and I had my teeth, and that was the whole character. It was like you had to build into the mask. But yeah, it was funny. It was, you get so these.
Good.
I remember. I feel like we connected right away. But it was one of the more memorable casting offices because when you have a bunch of nervous Hitlers pacing around, it's like, oh, okay. This is kind of a special trip I'm on here.
Yeah, and there was one guy who came in who had you could tell he had a mustache and he'd shaved it so it was a real Hitler mustache, and I was like, oh man,
that's commitment.
Yeah, hardcore crazy commitment. But you crushed, and you were so good that I remember turning over the back of your resume. I was like, this guy's had to have been in like a million movies. I was like, had to have. And you hadn't. Been in maybe
it was Jackass. Just that year I had a cameo in Jackass 3 because I'd done a bunch of stuff with those guys in the past. But that was my first dramatic role, and here we are. Can you believe that's over 7
You're
years ago.
speaking to the gas chamber.
You're speaking to the gas chamber.
Preaching. Yes, that made the trailer.
The
Yes.
gas chamber. Yeah. But you were so good, and I was like, I remember turning to casting after you left, and I was like, man, there is so many talented people out here who are not huge stars that deserve to be, and you were one of them. So much so, you were so good in that I personally wrote that part in one of the leads in Helen Keller versus Nightwolves for you to play the brother. Didn't have any casting for that. I just said, hey, I wrote this for you. Come and do this.
And if we ever do Trans Frank, he's definitely going to be my brother.
Trans Frank, exactly. And then Range 15 as well.
Yeah,
where it was like, we got to find a role for Jesse Merlin. Let's
with the singing cameo. No, and Helen Keller. I tell you, for those in the greater Ross Patterson and Drinkin' Bros audience who aren't familiar with it, do yourself a favor and sit down and imbibe whatever your favorite substance is and give it a try, because I think it's a masterpiece, and I don't think it ever fully found its audience.
I
really
say
think
Keller
it's
versus Nightwolves?
I think it's a really
One
special
of the
film.
funniest nights was
free on
that premiere.
Amazon Prime, yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
was that
streaming
premiere? Like, we all got fucked up.
That was great.
Like,
Yep.
we
Oh
went to
my
a
God.
giant theater.
I didn't
that
even
was
know who
packed.
these guys were. They were drunk, and they were dressed as colonial heroes, right? You were wearing powdered wigs, and you were really drunk.
And
You were like
white makeup.
hassling.
And white makeup.
You're hassling the guy on the step and repeat line. He has no idea who you are, and Ross is like, they're starring in the next movie. It's just like,
And so all these Hollywood reporters and all this shit
like,
are
who are these
taking
guys?
pictures of them dressed as colonials, but like seriously. And then I remember one of the photographers turns and was like, "What the fuck are these guys doing?" And I was like,
And we were in
whatever
the
they want.
voices too. Hello.
Yeah. They were in character the whole night and everything.
That's so funny.
Those premieres are a blast.
we're at the Vista. We did both Helen Keller and Range 15 there, and FDR,
Yeah,
right?
FDR, yeah. I think because what had happened was I had a premiere in 2007 or 8 there, Garden Party.
Oh, wow.
It was Jennifer Lawrence's first movie, and the premiere
crap.
was there, and I had never been to that theater before then, and I walked into that theater and I was like, oh my God, this is so gorgeous, and like the last kind of old school Hollywood theater
It is
left.
such a fucking cool theater too.
Such a blast that I was like, man, if I
it was
ever
so much
make my
fun.
own movies and get to choose where my premieres are, it's going to be there. So every premiere I think that I've had, I've scheduled there. 'Cause it's just a
totally
blast.
see why.
We drink, people are smoking outside, like it's fun, and we have it at midnight on a Friday.
Yeah.
We always do it at midnight on a Friday. So
We
way
do the party bus.
yeah, we
we
do party bus.
pregame.
Yeah, everybody can come in real fucking loose, have a great time, and then go home and enjoy whatever they just saw.
Absolutely. And part of why Helen Keller was so special as a premiere is that it was totally free. We just told people just show
Yeah,
up. And so it was
absolutely.
absolutely packed. Range 15, that was more of a media event because you had so many of the backers of the film. People
Yeah.
flew out who had supported
Yes.
the financing, and that was really special. It was
Yeah, I
inspiring
usually
to be
rent it
part of.
out and then keep it open to the public. That way everybody can come and have a good time and walk into something they have no idea about, never seen, and just enjoy whatever that experience is. Because I used to do it back in the day at Sunset 5 when they had
of course, yeah.
independent movies, and it was all the best of the best. And like I would just show up like on a Tuesday or Wednesday, didn't know what I was going to see. I'd look at a poster and say, all right, fuck, I'm going to see this tonight and see how it is. Sometimes it was the best movie I've ever seen. Other times not so much, but the experience was cool. And that's what I tried to do and convey through the rest of it. And it was a fucking blast.
Totally.
I've always enjoyed it. I've always enjoyed your performances.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And I'm curious, like about your career.
Sure.
And somebody like you who is so talented. How do you not get bitter about going into 90 auditions and
Yeah, good question.
a week and not getting
It's
beaten down by it?
It's one of those. I have to say, it was a real turning point for me, late 2010, when I auditioned for FDR. Because right after that, I always like to tell people I'm a very good second choice. So I came in. I was a last-minute replacement for a pretty famous actor in Reanimator the musical, and that ended up being a really big thing for me. That was right after we did FDR.
And I saw that play.
Yeah, you did.
And
yeah.
you were fucking fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I played Dr. Carl Hill. It was Stuart Gordon who directed the movie with the original effects team, adapted it for the stage as this amazing musical, and I played Dr. Hill, so I got decapitated, blood everywhere, and I had to carry my severed head around all night while singing. Kind of a trick. But no, FDR really kind of pushed me. It opened the door to horror to me. And it's interesting. I have a little bit of a theory about this. I think what makes horror so special is that it's one of the last frontiers for kind of unique character actors and talents that don't get a lot of play in mainstream stuff.
Right.
It's like coming from opera, what you look like doesn't matter. So having to retool yourself for Hollywood, where that's about 95% of what matters for a commercial audition,
opera's
or
just your voice, like,
Right.
hey, you can sing.
You could be a fat man.
exactly. So I
Yeah.
was, and even that's controversial now, but like I was wearing fat suits, and we were doing like opera until literally a few years ago was the last art form where blackface was tolerated, right? Like that just changed.
Sure,
Like
yeah.
decades after everybody else. So yeah, I was playing all sorts of older characters and heavier characters and in different parts of the world. But coming here where what you look like matters often so much more than what you can bring. That's why horror is wonderful. It's a place for unique people, and also comedy. But comedy where they reckon, I feel like in a certain way we're on the same wavelength. I get the tone of what you're trying to do, which is, often, it's so irreverent, but at the same time played very straight. And it's what I love in really these kind of brilliant offbeat comedies is what I strive for, and what I see is so perfectly exemplified in your work is the combination of erudition and smut. Somewhere between the profane and the sublime, you get the sweet spot, right? It's like you've got, right? It's like
It has never been more articulated better than you just said that. I'm
that's
going
the
to play
aesthetic,
that
right?
clip back over and over again. Yeah,
That's totally the aesthetic. It's just like you're going to have dick and fart jokes on top of an opera aria, on top of, wordplay that would be worthy of, the great writers of the 20th century. It's like, it would. I tell you, people, it will never pay to underestimate Ross Patterson in terms of what he can bring, particularly to dialogue and to character scenarios. But it is a little vexing. I'm still navigating my way. The few things for the broader audience outside of horror that might know me, I'm Fong in Street Fighter V, so I'm kind of like the current boss in the Street Fighter franchise, which
dope.
is cool. Yeah,
What's the voice to that? I want to hear it.
It's like 2 minutes. I'll finish you in 2 minutes. He's this kind of, a little bit of a Ming the Merciless kind of character, or a Fu Manchu, very old-fashioned. It's a kind of a.
That had to be a fun gig.
It was fun, and I can't talk about it yet, but I'm doing another voice thing next week, working with Ross a little bit, and then another friend.
Yeah, you're doing the audiobook for When Darkness Falls, He Doesn't Catch It.
The
Sequel to it next cries while he rides the steed.
I hope you're already getting your gastric
Where does it
juices
pick up?
pumping, people.
Does it pick
'cause
up
this is-
after?
It picks up 3 years after. So it
your
continues the
family's
story.
dead.
Yeah, continues the story, and then new characters come in. And
Awesome.
without giving it away, we had a bunch of actors in the last one. It crushed on Audible. It's in like the top 10 highest rated Audibles there is. And
It's unbelievable.
So this one, I was just like, great. I'm gonna come back to LA. I'll record it with my favorite people and take it even higher than the last one.
I just think it's also the collaboration between the amazing, all the military guys and heroes and the companies that you worked with on Range 15, and also your films, is that you understand an audience, I think, that hasn't really been spoken to in terms of comedy and in terms of literature and film. But it's just like men who read books too, it's like, and men like comedy too.
I mean,
It's,
you see, there was a giant gap. I mean, you remember like in the late 90s, like movies like Loaded Weapon and things like that.
Dude.
Like where they pushed the
Hot
boundary.
Shots part.
Yeah, Hot Shots,
Exactly.
Loaded
All those,
Weapon.
yeah.
And they all
then-
made money.
And then they stopped.
Right.
And it was kind of like, I kind of think like Scary Movie like kind of ruined it for that. Like that, like the Scary
interesting.
Movie series, and there was another one, like Not Another Teen Movie, like that kind of busted that slapstick comedy to where those didn't do well, so people stopped funding.
Well, not another team movie did okay. The scary movies, they did 90 of them, and it's like that's gonna
after the first two, like it's
that's
over.
gonna die out. I just after that, in that vein of comedy, the Wayans brothers took over. So they were doing all of those movies.
Legally Blonde. Or,
Yeah,
I mean,
all that shit.
And just second generation from SNL stuff,
Yeah,
It's
and
like-
it just.
but it wasn't Airplane. It wasn't.
No.
It wasn't.
It was Animal House,
Yes,
Yeah.
you need new actors and fresh faces. Like I think why a lot of this shit works. Somebody like you, they've never seen you before. So like when you come and do these movies, everybody's like, "Oh, who the fuck is that guy? He's awesome." That makes it more believable, and you're excited to go on a journey with these characters when you don't know the people. And my biggest thing today with comedies, because they're hardly getting made at all.
Truly.
Is I found after the election, we were talking about it before we got on the show. After the election, I feel like everybody is so politically correct on both sides.
Yeah, truly. Yeah.
That you're one thing or you're not one thing, and it's making comedy harder because people feel afraid to tell jokes about things. They're not voicing their true opinion. There is no comedic voices that are fresh, that are cutting through. Like Chappelle came back on Netflix with his 2 stand-up specials and crushed, and everybody was like, "Oh my god, Dave is the best." Dave's the best because Dave's telling original shit, and he's offending everybody.
And he's fearless,
still,
yeah.
And he doesn't give a fuck.
Right.
But he's the only one
Right.
left who's kind of doing that. And if he wasn't Dave Chappelle, would he be able to get away with that in today's current climate? I don't know. But it makes me sad that there is no new Borats or,
National Lampoon.
Yes. Yeah. We watched that movie on Netflix.
Isn't it good?
Great. Did you watch the National Lampoon movie on
Oh
Netflix?
yeah, my God, yeah. Well, because remember, it was such a strange experience. I did the first and last National Lampoon stage show since 1986. About 5 years ago, I did a show called Sketches from the National Lampoon with Matty Simmons, who was the founder and publisher. And this brilliant man. He wasn't the writer, but he was the publisher and and I mean, the man invented the credit card. He's one of the 3 people who came up with the Diners Club. He was a brilliant man. And it was a funny show. It didn't really hit. The one kid that went out of it, John Milheiser, ended up going to SNL for a year after that. But it was, that was a really interesting one. But it's funny. I wanted to tell you, I did an interesting. It was like a kind of more theoretical, but it was like a queer horror podcast with Michael Varrati recently called Dead for Filth. And I was
Great title.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And I was talking about your films, and I was, not against anyone in particular, but I was defending you in the sense that it's just like, when do we stop getting offended on behalf of other people?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, some people are going to find some of the content in Helen Keller and FDR objectionable. That's fine. But you made 2 movies in a row with a disabled action hero.
Yeah.
Who else is freaking doing that? And isn't it a good thing to have more of that?
Yeah.
It's
guy
just
in
like
a wheelchair, somebody who's blind, like
right. And it's like that is one characteristic. That's not the entirety of who they are. It's like we're not just putting them in a special category because of that one thing. They're complete people in addition to that.
Yes.
And so it was interesting. I had
Did he tell you about the book that we've been working on?
I don't think I know about this.
The Heterosexual Male's Guide to Homosexual Kama Sutra.
Oh, good heavens.
Yeah, it's called Homo YOLO.
Homo YOLO.
Every page you add another person, and then the last chapter is called House Party.
Oh, well, we should talk about this. I think you have to have the scissoring flag in there somewhere.
Yes.
It's like you have to your troop flag.
We need consultants.
No.
And he's a trusted consultant.
Yeah, easily. Jesse's on everything.
Oh, I wouldn't go that far, but it's
sexually. We've had some conversations where it's just like, holy shit, you really know,
I feel so vanilla and more bourgeois these days, but I'll put it on. I'll put it on for a role. It's just like.
Oh God, we really should do. We should do a 50 Shades of Grey. That's 2 dudes.
Oh, just 2 dudes. Yeah. Well, we've had a. I don't know if you know this. We've had a gay motorcycle gang movie that we've wanted to shoot for. This is
3 years.
It's close to 2 or 3 years now. Called 2 Wheels of Loneliness.
And it's a great title.
It's the first ever gay motorcycle gang movie.
Like motorcycle.
But it's shot
gang.
like a hardcore drama.
Oh,
like
wow.
a Lifetime movie.
Yeah.
Like
and they're all part of this motorcycle club called the Manholes.
The Manholes, yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. And
but they're all.
I'm pretty sure that was a club in San Francisco at one time.
Yeah, but the lead character, like at the beginning of the movie, he joins the club and they're like, you got one more thing to do, and they roll he's like, you got to roll the dice. Whatever number you roll is how many dudes you have to fuck. So he rolls.
But after that,
so he rolls an 11. On the dice, so he's gonna fuck 11 dudes, but he ends up fucking a 12th, and they're like, "Whoa! No one said you had to fuck the 12th dude. Like, you fucked an extra guy. You're gay. You got to get out of here." And he's like, "Wait, what? Isn't this an all gay motor?" And they were like, "No, we're not gay. Like, just you have to fuck other dudes just to do it, but we're not gay." But clearly, the motorcycle gang is gay.
They're all denying.
They're all denying,
and he's the only
gay.
one that's open about it.
Yeah.
So that's the whole movie.
But we've taken a ton of shit for that. Of like, you guys can't do this because we want to show like graphic gay sex scenes throughout.
God, like Bruce LaBruce, he makes horror movies that have that in the middle of them.
Really?
He's a crazy Australian horror filmmaker he's like periodically arrested by the cops and banned. His movies, L.A. Zombie is his favorite movie, or his most famous movie, and it's interpolated scenes of hardcore gore and then hardcore sex. It's just like no one else is making movies like this. Yeah,
for that though.
No, but I mean,
like,
he
no
gets
one
raided
ever
by the cops in countries.
No one has
it's
ever made
like,
an action movie that was a good action movie that just had pockets of 15 minutes of hardcore pornography.
Of hardcore gay
That's so
sex.
funny.
No,
Yeah,
I mean, it could be both.
I wish I could remember the title. A collaborator I work a lot with, David Del Val, is an amazing Hollywood film historian and archivist, was really close with Vincent Price and Christopher Lee. And Christopher Lee starred in a gay biker serial killer movie in the 70s.
What?
I don't know if you've ever seen it, but he's in all leathers and he's on a bike with a hot little blonde twink in the back. And he called up my friend. And he said, well, you know, David, I picked that boy because I thought you would like him. I thought he'd be your type. And so that's how he picked it. It was kind of like Lord Humongous in Road Warrior.
Here's a question too. Like, I did some research, and nobody is doing like the Article 15 like comedy thing for the gay community. at all.
Truly,
like
truly.
with shirts. Like, I want to do shirts that say like whiskey whore, like dong hunter. Like,
Yeah.
Like, do you think there's a market for that?
You gotta find it, you know. It's like it's like
they have a big clothing line, obviously.
Yeah,
so
of
like
course.
they're
Yeah, we should talk
constantly
about that,
searching
yeah.
for new ideas and shit like that to push the
But it's
boundaries.
like nobody
of it.
is doing
Nobody's
comedy things like that.
Yeah,
Like, where
no
it's
one.
like where it's like swipe right, I'm on Grinder or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, and you're just you're going for it. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, would that sell at all?
I don't know. God, you know, I'm so out of the community myself. But that is interesting. It's like what the gay. This is kind of probably an unpopular thing to say. I don't really believe a gay community exists any more than a straight community. It is a group of people who happen to be gay, right? It's
Sure.
like it's a construct.
well, I mean,
right?
definitely now, like it is blended.
Now,
like, yes.
Oh, yeah,
10
yeah.
years ago,
T-
there was
10
segregation.
Oh,
When,
sure.
Now there's
when
not.
When I
True.
moved here, well, actually, I'll start from NYU because I went to NYU after Ohio State. I was in I want to say they didn't call it Boys Town because that was what they called West Hollywood, but it was in the East Village, and, and it was all gay, and that was the pocket of like, oh, well, that's where all the gay bars are, that's where all the things are, and it felt separated. And then I moved from New York to LA, and again, when I was looking at places, they were like, well, West Hollywood is Boys Town, and that's all gay, and it felt separated. But what I will say to Jared's point is, I would say over the last 10 years, you're right. Like, it is blended everywhere, and nobody.
Like, we did a
nobody
trip
cares.
to San Francisco to go to Facebook headquarters, and like, we were there for a few days, and like, there's a lot of gray area over there. Like, everybody uses the word partner, and they're all polyamorous, and nobody has sexuality at all.
Yeah.
It's just whatever I feel like that night.
And I mean, they have orgies. They've like Silicon Valley's infamous for having these orgies now.
Yes, somebody blew the lid on that last year and started publishing about it because it's and it's interesting. It's ambiguous because like people feel pressured to participate to get ahead. You know, it's one of these kind of like, is this the new, you know,
Hollywood?
Drop your keys in the bowl and put on a mask.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. It's a different time now. But I'm to his point, like what he was saying about the t-shirts and things like. Is there no comedic elements, you know, like in the gay community?
There's got to be like a lot of bro guys. Like,
well, there is. It's not monolithic. I mean, it's like it seems like an PC example to bring up, but think of Ernst Röhm, right? Like there are gay figures that don't fit. You know, he was the head of the Brown Shirts, right? Like there are gay movements on all sides of the political spectrum and in all cultures that don't map to what we think of in terms of the, you know, the dominant culture here in LA and West Hollywood. West Hollywood is an interesting one. The only reason it exists with it's almost like kind of historical redlining. It was unincorporated county land, and it was the only place you could bribe the sheriffs to have bars open without getting raided. Like you couldn't bribe the LAPD, but you could bribe the sheriff. So only in county land, places that weren't cities.
Gotcha.
And that's like historically, that's why they all set up there, and in other places outside the LA city limits.
Gotcha.
Like you see these.
It's just funny because I retort back to this. I remember the first season of the X-Files. Like one of the episodes was hinging on a congressman that was being extorted or like kind of held over his head, that he didn't want people to find out that he was gay. Like, and you think about that was 20 years ago. Like where it was that big a deal.
Yeah.
Like like, oh my God, I can't let people find out. Like, and now it's like, no, you probably would have done better if you would have told everybody.
Yeah, yeah. I just to me like relating back to comedy, it's I don't feel like anybody's even doing anything comedically for gays or anyone else. Like it feels like everybody's so offended or trying to do everything. Like that's why this movie intrigued me. Like it would be a fucking blast.
2 Wheels of Lemon.
Yeah, it would be a fucking blast.
I'm very excited, hopefully, about Rescue 16 at some point because I just feel like the way things were set up by the end of that film, it's like it demands more.
The script is done, and it has been for a while. It's trying to get all of their busy schedules back together. I asked Matt on a separate podcast on a one-on-one with him if he thought it would ever get made, and he said yes, probably in a couple of years. What is your? I
mean, I would love to. You know what that hinges on? The money.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if there's a demand for it yet. Like we don't know.
The sequel? Yeah.
People have to tell us. Like, yeah, we hear it onesie twosies. Hey, what about Rescue 16? What about Rescue 16? But it's like because like the fire has died down from the movie, and we've all been doing other things. Like we would have to be reminded that
I hear it all the fucking time.
A demand for it.
Yeah, I hear it all the time. Did you get a lot of people hitting you up after that movie?
It was from people who I didn't know were watching my work otherwise. You know, I got an email in the middle of the night from an opera singer in London watching it streaming. He'd bought it on Apple, and he's just like, I can't believe you're in this movie. This is so great. And it's like, you're watching this in London? It's like, you know.
That's literally my response every time somebody asks me, like, I had a flight attendant on a Delta flight was like, were you in a really obscure zombie movie? And I was like, yeah, why would you watch that?
Yeah, and it wasn't that obscure for an independent film. I mean, it was the top performing independent film of 2016. But these days it feels like if it's not on Netflix, it doesn't count anymore. Whereas
that's true.
Back before, if you were on Netflix, it was like, you went straight to Netflix, huh?
Right, it's a kiss of death.
That's serious. Everybody was like,
it's funny. Let me pitch it's the one major thing I have on Netflix right now. I'm pretty proud of this because I went to festivals where they got a movie called Beyond the Gates.
Is that on Netflix now?
It is. It is on Netflix and every other way.
Films by that?
They did for distribution. Yeah, it's a haunted VHS video board game open into the Hellgate to another dimension kind of movie.
Really, this sounds cool.
Yeah, it is fun, and I play Vincent Price, kind of sinister curio shop owner. It did well. I went to a festival in London, and so we got international with it. And hopefully we'll be making a sequel to that later this year. Barbara Crampton from Reanimator, she's our star in it. And so that was nice, and that kind of brought me a little bit more out into the horror audience. And I got another one coming out called All the Creatures Were Stirring. Christmas horror is kind of a thing right now. Christmas horror and anthology movies. Yeah, that's another thing about horror, too. So that's coming out. It's hitting festivals right now.
Yeah, but Krampus didn't do well.
Well, but there were like 3 Krampus movies that came out at the same time. And it's just like... And
that one came out on Christmas Day, and it was like, death on Christmas Day.
Yeah, who releases a movie on Christmas Day?
That's the tough part of it. So, like, I think they had a really bad release time with it. I didn't see the movie. It could have been shit, but...
You know who else had a bad release time? Was tomorrow... The one with Tom Cruise, where he keeps repeating...
Oh, Tomorrowland? Or...
Live, Die, Repeat.
Well, they changed the
name.
Nobody
knows what the fucking name is. Anyway.
Yeah, because the real name was something else.
They
Live, Die, Repeat was the original name, and then they ended up doing that on the DVD. But
they released
like Day After Tomorrow
day
or
of
like
Transformers.
Oh,
and I was like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah. But there's nothing you can do. Sometimes you're trying to counter program against other movies, and that's just how it is.
It's funny you mentioned that. We've got. I'm hoping later this year. I don't want to scoop it, but I think the Reanimated musical soundtrack will be coming out later this year, which we recorded 2 years ago. I'm very excited about. George Wendt is one of our star actors in that.
He was Norman Shears.
It's fantastic.
You were amazing in that play, and like for those of you who don't know Reanimated the musical, your fans for that were fucking diehards. Like when I went and saw you that night. There was people that were coming back for like their 10th or 12th times, and there's a like splashdown rows.
Yeah.
You have to wear plastic because there's so much blood that shoots out into the audience.
Yeah, we have a splash zone where we just and people line up for those seats. No, it was fun. We did it in Europe. We did it in Vegas last, and also they had a picture of my severed head in the New York Times with a rave, and they loved to sharpen the knives for LA shows, so it was a big deal. Still hoping to get a long run. The only way you can really make money in theater is if you run a long time. It takes about 1.5 years to make your investment back. So you've got to run forever. But we're kind of racing. It's funny, the source story, because it's Lovecraft is public domain, and someone else is trying to do their own Reanimator musical in London that's totally unrelated, but it's like, you wouldn't be calling it Reanimator if it weren't for the movie. That's not even the name of the story.
Exactly.
You know, it's like, so we're hustling to get our brand out there.
But a lot of people do that, and studios do that a lot. Like they'll look for public domain, Moby Dick, all that shit, and try to, because they don't have to buy the rights from anybody.
Naturally.
What's your dream? Like in your world as an actor, what is your end all be all dream? Did you move here to say I want to win an Oscar?
Oh,
I want to be a working actor. I want to be on a TV show and win an Emmy. I want to do comedy. I want to do drama.
It's funny you mentioned winning an Oscar. I'm all about the work. Thank you. That's a very interesting question. I've never been too fond of Oscars, just because people don't know this. If you look at the real history, it was a union busting thing. It was an attempt in the 1920s to prevent the Screen Actors Guild and the Writers Guild from incorporating. It was trying to keep people in the conditions they were working in.
Really? I didn't know that, actually.
The producers were like, oh, no, you don't need these unions. Take this little statuette. It was like, at the time, it was a very political thing. So that's the long-term history of it. No, I was born here. I'm an old showbiz family. My great-grandmother toured with Sarah Bernhardt in the 1890s. Like, she was like a baby Jane as a child star.
Really?
My grandparents were major writers in radio, film, and television. My grandfather was a blacklisted union president, just because he wouldn't name names when he had to testify in front of HUAC in the late 40s. And so he couldn't write under his own name for 8 years. And my dad is a construction boss in television. My mother was a Broadway child star. So I never had a chance, right? I was going to end up in some form of entertainment.
Sure.
The dream is consistent and meaningful work. It's like, money, accolades has never been that meaningful to me. Like, part of, like, none of us got rich making a brilliant small budget comedy, but we made a thing of beauty. We made something meaningful that we can all be proud of. It's like, I would like to reach a larger audience. That's one thing, and hopefully we'll see maybe later this year, but continue to reach a larger audience in video games and things like that, where what you look like doesn't necessarily matter as much, where it's really just prima la voce, where it's just, first the voice. I'd like to work more in film and television, and there's more stuff coming. I did it. This is something you would like. It's a pity it's on YouTube Red, so only their subscribers ever saw it. Another Christmas horror I saw that we made for Blumhouse. It was fantastic. It was called 12 Deadly Days.
Blum. Did you have fun?
I didn't interact with him. I'd be interested to have that conversation.
Were you nervous too?
Well, Blumhouse is like the big player in town. You want to get your foot in the door. You want to get your foot in the door with him here in LA.
He's the only one in town, to my knowledge, who has a guaranteed 5 pictures a year on the slate that have to be released. So no matter what, he has 5 movies that will be out in theaters for a major wide release of 2,500 plus screens. And he just seems continue to knock it out of the park. Insidious is all his. Is it Saw? Saw that's all his.
Was it Paranormal Activity?
Get Out was his.
Right.
I mean, it's his.
So there's like 10 of those for every Gem and the Holograms, right? Like he makes a lot of.
Yeah, and I worked with him. I did one of his first movies, and he's a fucking hustler. He was able
so smart. Yeah.
It was this independent film we did, and it got into Sundance. But it was literally like 35 celebrities of like the hugest names of all time that he put in this movie, and I was just like, "Fuck, how did this guy do this?" He's just a hustler, and like he's one of the few people I can say who deserves all of his success, because that motherfucker's been grinding for a while. Don't you?
And you've seen his production office, right? It's an electrical van, right? Yeah. He drives around in a nondescript electrical van. It's like Blum Electrical Works.
Yeah,
and that's just where he works out of when he's on the road.
And the deal is, because like the movies are low budget, so you're not going to get paid a crazy ton, but he's loyal. So if you do a fucking awesome job and don't bitch, he's going to put you in all of the rest of them, and he did it with Lynn Shay, who's been in
she's doing
all
really
of our movies. She's in every single one of those, and like, great dude.
I'm hoping there would be more for anthology television. I know they're developing something
here,
right now because
like
they did this one with YouTube Red and ended up being really good with amazing people in it. With Bill Moseley and Johnny Cassier and all these great horror icons. And I had a great starring role in an episode. I played the homicidal elf leader of a Christmas suicide cult. which is like typical typecasting, right? And it was really good, but it's like you can only see it on YouTube Red. It was called 12 Deadly Days. Really great anthology stuff. But no, he's found the formula. Like, why roll the dice on one $10 million movie when you can make 5 $2 million movies?
Yeah.
It's just like, and give more people a chance. And one thing, that's something like, and I hope we can bring you back to maybe a hard horror or horror comedy again, is like, compared to other things, horror is one of those few genres where you can consistently make money if you keep the budget at a certain level.
At a certain level, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah.
It would. And I will say this, like I've been hired, maybe 6 or 7 times to write horror scripts. I mean, strictly horror, no comedy. So they're out there. They just didn't get made. You know, I get paid as the writer, but they exist. They're out in the world, and I don't know. I have a feeling like there's some of those scripts that they'll call in a few years and be like, "Hey man, do you still have that one thing?" Because I still get those calls too for comedies, where it's like, "Hey man, do you still have this thing?" Like I got a call maybe 2 months ago for a movie called Searching for Sajak. I had written a movie in 2003 or 4 about, and I sold it to Fox. That's involved a kid who was writing a term paper to graduate college, and he was never allowed to watch Wheel of Fortune growing up. Cut to, he turns in this paper, and the professor's like, "Go home. This needs more work." And he finds an old VHS tape of his mom and dad on an episode of Wheel of Fortune, and the birth certificate doesn't match up. Pat is hitting on her, and he thinks that Pat Sajak's his dad.
Oh,
So they have to go cross country.
Scenario.
It feels a little like road trip where they've got it. He goes with his buddies cross country to get on the college Wheel of Fortune so he can meet Pat Sajak and ask him if he is the father. And then obviously they go through all these pitfalls and all this other shit. But
so funny.
We sold it, got everything ready to go,
great.
and Pat Sajak said no at the very end. And I was like, he had a production company and all this shit, and his answer was, I wanted to do more things than just host Wheel of Fortune, and I still think that's going to happen. It's been 12 years or whatever. That's not the case. And I get a call literally, 2 months ago. "Hey man, do you still have that script? Do you care if I try to get Pat again?" And I was like, "You know what? Feel free.
You go ahead and go ahead and tilt at that windmill. You know, it's like,
yeah."
Oh, but that would be great. I wanted to share one funny story. It just occurred to me. I listened to a nice podcast interview, a review of my film Beyond the Gates, and they go, "Was like, oh yeah, that guy Jesse Miller, he's really good in this movie." And he was so great, crapping in that vase in FDR American Badass. And I just had to face palm, and it's like, that is a funny scene. He's a funny actor, but I was Werewolf Hitler, and I was not James Roosevelt shitting in the vase. And when we were shooting the diner scene for Helen Keller versus Nightwolves, I didn't know that I was surrounded by America's greatest heroes.
Jared was,
it was Jared and was Rocco and Matt were there, and I think it was you. And somebody was just like, "Oh, you're so great, crapping in that vase." And I get my little shit, like, "Who are these guys?" I was Werewolf Hitler, and Matt punches him hard. He's like, "You fucking idiot!" He's like, "That's Werewolf Hitler, you know that." And it's just like, and I'm just like, "Who are these? Who are these bearded maniacs that I haven't met before?" And of course, I ended up being my favorite people on the planet.
And the beauty is, they show up with a bottle or 2 bottles of Jameson. And I said, "Hey," and they were like, "Hey, is it cool to drink?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's my set. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, right.
People smoke weed in the trailers and the parking lots, all this shit. I don't give a fuck. Just do your job." And my only advice to you guys was, I was like, "Hey, man, it's a really long day. So if you start getting hammered, like,
watch out.
It's 12 hours. You're there for 12 hours on set in a diner. You were the only one who made it. Rocco and Matt were exhausted. Just spent by the end of it. And I knew your passion for filmmaking at the end of it, because you were there till the very,
he's a natural.
It's so
after.
obvious. He got cut, and we're
I wanted
watching
to talk
Richard
to
Reel.
everybody.
Yeah.
No, it was, and I should have seen that. Like, looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, this guy's gonna make a movie. These guys are gonna go make their own movie.
And I don't know if I've ever talked about this, but I took a lot of shit for making Range 15. And to this day, they thought the script was too aggressive. They didn't like the stance on 2A and a bunch of shit in the script. And to this day, there was a couple actors we called to get on the podcast this week. I'm gonna tell you this live, and you don't know it, actually, what I'm about to say. But there are a couple agents that said to me, man, "Hey, I think you fucked yourself by hanging out with those Black Rifle Coffee guys." And I was like, I'm sorry. And they were like, "Yeah, man, I think you've made your bed with them." And I was like, "How so? Just entertain me on that." And they were like, "Well, with the state of politics in the country and all this other shit." And I'm like, "What the fuck does that have to do with making movies or podcasts or anything?" And I'm like, I'm dead serious. And there was a couple of people that we wanted to get on the show that we couldn't get, and it was crazy. And I'm like, these are my best friends, so like I don't really give a fuck what you want to do, and
of course, but
great if you don't want to be on a show with 2.7 million listeners. I don't fucking
well, it's
care.
one of these things. It's just like, no matter what your worldview is. I think it was Michael Jordan who had a pretty good answer when people nailed him about that. He's like, Republicans buy shoes too.
Yes.
And it's just like, like not everything is instructive, or didactic.
When you're going to see a movie, I don't want to know who you voted for. Like,
right,
I don't want to. I don't care. And like today, when you see people like Seth MacFarlane or Melissa Milano and all this shit, constantly.
Every time.
Judd Apatow.
No, yeah, Judd Apatow can
Jesus
eat
Christ.
a fucking bag of dicks, you piece of shit.
Yeah,
that's Judd Apatow went after one of my friends last week. So he can
on Twitter,
on Twitter, yeah.
Oh, I
on
didn't
Twitter.
know that.
And he went after a fucking noble dude too, Marty Skovlin. He's a writer for Havoc Journal. He's written a number of books. He was a host on the Discovery Channel show about John F. Kennedy.
Yeah,
and literally was just stating a fact, not voicing his opinion. And Judd Apatow
found it somehow.
Went after him, and
like
all his little fucking cronies, are lighting Marty up, but they didn't realize, we fight back.
Yeah,
the Drinkin Bros are tougher than Judd Apatow's little fucking, liberal friends.
Right.
So it's like, now when you're pissing off this country's fucking military and sheriffs and police and first responders, like we're a lot tougher than the kids that owe $110,000 to UC Davis.
Yeah. and I because me personally, like for movies and shit with like Judd and those guys, like I didn't know what Judd Apatow's political affiliation was. I had no fucking idea. But I liked it before social media, because then there was mystery. You were going to see things you didn't know about people's personal lives and all of that shit. And I wish there was more of that. But it's only gotten worse.
Yeah, but what's annoying too, though, is you see all these interviews too when they get on the Tonight Show or the nighttime shows and stuff like that. It's like they all think this is my stage now. I'm going to tell you.
This is my platform.
My opinion. And it's like, dude, we wanted to hear about the special effects in the new X-Men.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and the question is, what are you there to discuss? And it's ultimately, I think it's the quality of the work and the art that matters.
Yes.
It's like, if I was really upset about, I love a lot of composers. I love Wagner. If I got focused on some of the hateful crap that he wrote, I would never be able to listen to the music.
Right.
You have to separate the art and the artist as one thing. And also, like another one I'll quote. It comes back to Oscar Wilde. It's like there is no immoral or moral book. A book is either well written or badly written. Right. It's like you don't look for morality in a piece of art or a piece of work. That's not the proper structure for it. That's not the proper function.
Yeah.
It's
like with you, I have no idea. Like your social media is you're always just a fun, cool guy. You're talking about the stuff you're in. I have no idea who you voted for. Yeah. And I like, to me as an actor, like, oh great, I can believe you in more shit because I don't know. We're different because we run a fucking podcast and shit. And we talk about our lives every day.
Oh,
but,
sure.
But
well, and again, that's how I feel about it. You want to reach the broad audience.
Yes,
like
broadest audience you could possibly.
People aren't interested in me because of my political views. That's not why I'm here. It's like, and also just in a very kind of practical sort of way, I feel that particularly for working actors who are very vulnerable, we're not like writers or directors who are creating your own work. It's like, why hand your opponents or anybody a cudgel to club you with?
Yeah.
Why bring it out? It's like
wholeheartedly.
I mean, I admire, no matter, we see eye to eye on a lot of stuff. I'm sure we don't on others, but it's just like, I admire you on how outspoken you are on a lot of these issues, because honestly, I feel like a little bit of a coward. Like even wanting to say something encouraging in the context of a lot of the big debates right now is like, who's going to be? Why do I want to get the microscope on me on Twitter today? Do I want to get the magnifying glass burning me like a little ant?
Right.
I don't.
Right.
I want to talk about art and music and literature and life.
I just see both sides to every issue, and again, like. We took a lot of shit and me personally, we had Michael Rappaport on the show, and he goes after Trump every single day.
Sure.
And I think on Twitter alone, maybe 5,000 or 6,000 followers from that show, and people were like, how the fuck could you have him on your show and talk to him or whatever? And same thing, I was like, again, I don't care who anybody voted for. Just be an interesting, cool dude. He came on the show, was great. Didn't talk about politics. Didn't
well,
get
and
into
this
anything.
is, again, worldviews are separate. part of what makes this so personal is I come from a blacklisted family, like even if I completely disagree with your politics, I don't think it's okay for people to say you no longer get to work because I don't like what you believe.
Right.
That is messed up.
And
that is not, and that is like this a lot of people paid for that when my grandfather died. I mean, he'd been a book critic for 35 years. And like, even though he came out of the blacklist in 56, he couldn't write under his own name for 8 years. His career never fully got back, and he lived another 40 years. Like, so a lot of people were cut down at their prime for living, they're just for refusing to throw other people under the bus. And after he died, we found all of his political books hidden behind a false bookshelf in the basement. Like in the late 50s,
Really?
he moved all of his stuff behind another set of books because, I mean, he had HUAC guys coming to the house and talking to the kids. I mean, and he's just like, Mr. Merlin, it's really too bad. If you had actually been a communist and you could name some names, you'd really help us out. And he's like, I'm sorry, I'm a union organizer. We don't, like, his thing for the Writers Guild is like, we only judge writers based on their work. We're not going to look at their politics.
Right.
And that was different because the Screen Actors Guild did collaborate. They did hand over names.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So it varied union by union.
Yeah.
And it's like, so that's just on the edge of living memory for a lot of us.
Me personally, I hate the unions. I think unions fuck all this shit up, especially with like teachers unions. Like if you get tenure, what's the look? There's been some good teachers and some crappy teachers, and it's like, so great, you gave a crappy teacher tenure, and then they're fucking there forever, and you can't fire them, and Screen Actors Guild fucked themselves, in my opinion, when the writers' strike happened. They merged with AFTRA, and
I voted against it. Everybody I know voted against that merger.
No
it was
residuals,
such a
no. I mean, they took away everything, and it was just like, unions fuck everything, I think. There's probably some union workers at home going, no, fuck you.
Well, it's like, I think it varies by industry, and a lot of them have a specific historic function that may or may not. I tend to think a lot of the time they do. Even though I'm a member of two and they drive me crazy, it's like I'm still better than not having them. But at the same time, often you have to assess: are you out for the workers' interest or for the union interest? And it's not always the same.
Sure.
It's like but it's ambiguous. Like, look, and I have this debate with people. Union people voted for Trump, right? So it's not a linear left-right thing.
Right.
Many unions, entertainment unions nationally, like it's not, union workers aren't necessarily who people think of them as. It's like it's much more heterogeneous than people realize.
Yeah. Well, let's pivot and switch gears.
Sure.
Here. If you were, we had this debate on another show. If not a debate, but a wish list, so to speak. If you could play any person in a biopic, who would it be?
Oh, in a biopic.
Yeah.
God, it's like, I think it'll show you how out of step I am.
Jared's.
Oh, well, I want to hear this one.
What? It's not out of step.
Blink 182. He wants to play the lead singer of Blink 182.
No, I want to play Mark. I don't want to play Tom.
That's right. He wants to play Mark Hoppus. Yeah.
Yeah.
From Blink 182.
Well, I would buy a ticket. Why not?
Yes.
Come on.
See? I have a supporter. I have one supporter.
I tend to be fascinated by some of the more esoteric historical figures. Like the one-man show, the story I really want to tell is Brother Theodore. I don't know if you remember him, Brother Theodore Gottlieb. He was, what people would remember him from, he was on Letterman 18 times in the 80s and 90s, and he would just get on there and he would just insult, and like he was like the rudest, most hostile guest you would ever see on late night television. He was brilliant.
But was it an act, or
it was
him?
Well, that's the question.
Was it like Andy Kaufman?
He was one of these people, one of these unique people. He was a Holocaust survivor. He fled into Switzerland, lost his whole family, and he survived as a chess hustler throughout the World War II in Switzerland. Came to the New York State, a chess hustler, and then he came to New York, survived doing that, and basically he got up with his horrendous, gut-wrenching experiences about the Holocaust and would do these bleak, hopeless, existential diatribes, and people would laugh. And basically his whole thing was he called it stand-up tragedy. And he would just get up there and just do, I mean, he would tell this like 45-minute monologue about his mother and father cooking dogs into oil and selling it as, Canis oleo, oil of dog, and making this whole story about selling quack medicine to people. And it was the whole story of the Holocaust, but writ large in some demented metaphor about a family eating itself alive. And it's just like, and you can hear recordings of the, it's like, more, you see, but maybe this speaks to why I'm not a gigantic celebrity now. It's like that kind of figure is appealing to me.
But here's the thing, you're consistent. You're the most interesting actor I've ever met.
Oh, bless you.
Well read, well versed, and like things that I fucking have no goddamn idea about. But taking a story like this and telling it would probably be one of the most fascinating movies ever.
Could be. Gilles de Rais, there's another one. Gilles de Rais was a comrade of Joan of Arc. He was a great French national hero in the war with the English at the time, and ultimately he was put up for trial for torturing and satanic diabolical rites, torturing and having sex with over 150 kids. Choir boys. No, this is a brutal story. And it was a huge trial, and it brought all of France, and now it's debated whether or not it was all a frame job, and it was like competing interests. Like, so I don't know, perhaps it's the horror audience, some of these like long-term unsolved semi-satanic diabolical crime stories.
Yeah. You gravitate towards.
That's cool.
Well, like Joan of Arc, it's like you think about, The Devils by Ken Russell. Someone, boy, I'd love to see you make a movie like that. It's just, something truly edgy. But I am so delighted to be here with two of my favorite men on the planet. I miss the other Drinkin' Bros. Please send them my love. I mean, my goodness.
Thank you for being here. We're at the point of the show where we get to the Drinkin' Bro of the Week.
Oh, yes.
The Drinkin' Bro of the Week is somebody that has inspired you, has influenced you along the way towards either the person that you are now or as an actor. But you can give that to anyone you like.
Drinkin' Bro of the Week. Google him, look up a YouTube interview. His name was Quentin Crisp. He was my mentor in New York in the 1990s. He lived from 1908 to 1999, and he came out as an openly gay, effeminate man in London in 1930 when it was a crime, and was beaten for almost every day for years. He was followed. He was ostracized by the gay community. He was arrested. He was 60 years old when they finally decriminalized homosexuality, but he never compromised who he was. He wanted to show people that people like him existed, and it was like the most gentle sort of protest. It wasn't, he didn't approve of marches, he didn't approve of the protest movement. He wanted to be who he was, and then the rest of the world would come to him. So his book, and it was a movie, actually, it was a real breakout role for John Hurt as a young man. It's called The Naked Civil Servant, but it's just, being gay aside, it is one of the most beautiful stories of being an outsider in a hostile world and finding your way. And it's like, he had this wonderful line, he says, in an expanding universe, time is on the side of the outcast. People who used to live in the suburbs of human contempt will find that without changing their address, they eventually live in the metropolis. But in my case, it took a really long time. It's just like, it's right.
The way you speak and how eloquent you are, I have a new person that I'd like to read at my funeral. If you could give my eulogy now at my funeral, it would, I'm in. I'm gonna call Jesse. Well, you'll see my wife on Tuesday.
My beloved sister.
Yes, you'll see her on Tuesday. I'm gonna tell her, like, hey, you're giving the eulogy now. God, you're one of my favorite people on this planet. You're one of my favorite actors, and look, I wish you continued success and broader success with a massive audience. Because if there is a guy out there that truly deserves it, it is you. And thank you for doing the show today, buddy.
I love you guys. I'm dying to work with you again. I'm so excited to be here and to meet, even from a distance, your amazing audience.
Yeah. Where can people find you on social media?
JesseMerlin.com. I'm at Jesse Merlin on Twitter and
Instagram.
No, I'm a little too old timey for that. I'll get there eventually. So just Twitter and my .com, and would love to hear from you and thank you for listening.
Yes, hit up Jesse Merlin on Twitter. That's not IE. That's JESSEMERLIN. Truly one of the most fascinating people on the planet. Thank you again for Jesse Merlin. Jared Taylor. I'm Ross Patterson. Drinkin' Bros.